politics. Our next guest has a new piece on FoxNews.com. He says it's time for people to declare their independence from the federal government. Joining us now is Chuck DeVore with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Chuck, what exactly do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by that is it's kind of some advice to the resist movement, to the Never Trump movement, to realize that in our federal system, we've got 50 states, and each of those states has their own ability to tax and to spend and to regulate. And that, you know, President Trump being able to pick a second U.S. Supreme Court justice, it's not the end of the world for these folks. I mean, certainly I like it, but they ought to focus locally, focus on their families, their communities, their cities, their counties, and their states. There's so much policy at the local level.
Well, I get that, but I guess the retort would be, hey, you know, we're talking about the Supreme Court, which could dictate the rules of our land for decades to come, including some core issues that really people are very passionate about.
Well, again, that is true. However, under our federal system, the states have the ability to tighten things up or to have their own rules. Just because the federal government says that, for example, states can't regulate abortion doesn't mean that, for example, California couldn't have looser rules than other states. So what we're talking about is going back to where we had significantly greater policy latitude at the local level. That's the way this country was designed. That's what the founders did when they crafted the Constitution. They understood that not only do you have separation of powers at the federal level between the executive and the legislative and the judicial, but you also have a separation between the national government and state governments. And that's the way it's supposed to be. And if folks realize that, I think that they might reduce the temperature a little bit.
All right, Chuck, you brought up California. I want to talk to you about this because you used to be an assembly member there. Former San Diego City Council member Carl DeMaio says that he's raised more than $1.1 million in his campaign to repeal that state's gas tax. What do you think of this repeal efforts, and could it actually help Republicans win in California in November?
So, first of all, Carl DeMaio is a political genius. And if he's behind this, I am certain that it's going to pass. Because, first of all, California voters, they're perfectly fine with taxing what they view as the super wealthy, which is why in California you have the highest marginal income tax rate in the country. But in the case of this gas and vehicle tax, it hits the average California family of four with two cars for $500 a year in additional taxes. And I don't think the average Californian is going to stand for it. And what you're likely going to see, based on past efforts that are similar efforts to put tax increases out to the voters, if the tax increase is broad-based and hits the average Californian, they're going to vote against it. And I don't care whether the other side spends $20, $50, or $100 million.
Right.
Proposition 6 is likely going to pass. And that money, that $5.4 billion a year, is going to go back to the taxpayer. Now, the problem, Charles, with California politicians is that they raise plenty of money. They have a huge budget. They have among the highest taxes in the country. But they put that money into other things, like, for example, government employee union pensions.
Sure.
And then there's no money left for roads.
Yeah, they call that the old bait and switch. But I think, to your point, I think they've run out of things to tax, and people are pushing back. And I think even some of these big-time Democrats in California could see the writing on the wall. Thanks a lot, Chuck. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.